Hello YouTube, my name is Bro. This is episode 21 of the Crunchyroll Reviews series, and tonight we are looking at the anime Purinsu-sama Maji Love Revolutions, Season 3. Now, this season is an interesting one because of the way the story is done and what the story revolves around. I say it's interesting because anyone that knows the way the Utapri anime is done, every episode is a character-driven story for the most part. Okay, so when you think about that, and you think about the way they did these episodes, it was really, really interesting. Now, what we got is we have the Superstar Sports Festival, otherwise known as a Triple S. And you have the Quartet Night, who is given the spot by Shining. And it is believed they are going to go to the festival to represent the agency in hopes to compete and to perform the opening song for the ceremony. That is the belief. Well, what we come to find out is by the end of episode 1, it gets a little bit different. It becomes more of a competition between Quartet Night and STARISH. Now, why does it become a competition? Well, STARISH has aspirations that they want to be the one to perform the opening song at the concert. And it was going to get them going through a project to be able to do that. The project would be called the Cross Unit Project. And that involves members of STARISH working together that may or may not have worked together in the past. The three cross units were Natsuki and Atoya. Then you had Ren, Cecil, and Seo, or Sho. And finally you had Masato and Ichino's Takoya working together. So those were the 7 members of STARISH in their groups. Then you have the Quartet Night, and they would get individual episodes. And those were done really well to develop their characters because in Season 2, the Quartet Night was developed only as supporting characters. Okay? That's the way they were treated. They were treated more like characters to sort of bounce off of their co-hosts, their juniors. In this season, they were essentially competing with each other. So you had the cross unit working, and you had the episodes with the senpais. But even in those episodes, they got to work with their juniors in some way, shape, or form. So, like, say for who was it? Reiji. You had Takoya and you had Atoya working together. They did the challenge corner because Reiji is, by the way, a magician as well as a musician. You had Camus. Well, he wasn't. Camus is the only exception to the rule, by the way. He wasn't really working with his junior. He was working more specifically with Haruka because she had to work on his song Saintly Territory, which is, by the way, as far as I'm concerned, probably the song of the season. At some point I'm going to do my top 5 or whatever for this season, and some people might be mad at me. That's all I'm going to say. But the episodes were done interestingly because they were character driven. So you got to learn more about the Quartet Night in this season than you did in season 2 because of the way they were treated. Because of the fact that we already pretty much knew a lot about STARISH, we weren't really working on their characters that much. Do you get what I'm saying? So, if you want to say that story-wise this season was kind of weak, alright, I can jive with that a little bit. Because one was dominating over the other. Even though you can kind of say that with the last season too. But it worked out a little bit better in the end because you still had to wrap up a lot of stories when it comes to STARISH. And even in theory, they're not done yet. But they had to wrap them up the best they could, and that's what they had season 2 with the OVA to do. You get what I'm saying? I'm trying to make this make sense the best that I can. So you have that. And it was done so well that I actually enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed, like I said, I'm a big Quartet Night fan. I really enjoy their characters and their stories a lot. You know, if you really read about Reiji, you learn about his friendship with a former idol, and you learn about how, you know, he was in a very dark place at one point. If you read about Camus, you understand what his occupation actually is, as opposed to just being an idol, and you understand why he's a bit of a hard ass. If you read about Minamoto, you learn a lot about him. But I think the way they do this show for people is a little bit differently when they do the story. I don't think they're writing the story for the people that played the games. It's kind of like, how do I explain this? I think they know there's people that play the games. That's obvious. But they wanted to write this for the people that may not be either interested at all or at first into the games, and then when they watch it they'll determine, okay, I want to play the games or at least want to read more about the characters, and then they learn more and they go, whoa, that's pretty cool. You get what I'm saying? They don't go into the fact that Camus is a count from Permafrost. They don't go into Reiji. Well, they hint at Reiji's situation with his depression and so forth. But they don't actually go into it. You see what I'm saying? They want you to have to look it up. And I understand in that respect that's why they're so vague with the stories. And if you really sit down and you watch the way they handle it, they'll give you a little bit. Because if they gave you it all, you have no interest in wanting to play the games. Do you see, or to research it yourself. Do you see what I'm saying? The anime is the teaser. It's the starter to the main course. The appetizer to the main course. The main course is reading the bios, playing the games, whatever you have to do, reading the roots for each character. That's what you have to do, and that is the way it's done. And it's actually done pretty brilliantly, I think. So once you understand the way they do the story, it's actually not that bad. And the way they did the story for these guys, especially towards the end was interesting with the way they twisted the characters of the Quartet Night. And you know what's weird? I think they do that to see if people like myself that like the Quartet Night are going to start hating them because of the way they treat STARISH at the end. But my thinking is, no, I can't hate them because they weren't the ones that barged in to Shining's office when the other group was being given the spot for the Triple S. So I can't hate them. They're not the antags in this setup. If you think about it, it's almost like they made STARISH out to be the villains in a way. If you think about it, it was almost like role reversal for a switch. And that was pretty interesting the way they did that. Now, like I said, the way they wrote the story tied into the character development. The character development is done, and the plot progression and story progression is done in a way with this series because of the fact that they do character-driven stories versus giving you necessarily one continuous story. I mean, yes, there is the one overall story, but the bits and pieces that they have to give you from the other characters have to help you drive the story and things. And it is formulaic to a degree, excuse me, but it's not boring. It's enjoyable, and I like it a lot, the way they do it. And I think we need to see more of it, honestly. Give me a formula and make it simple for me, someone who doesn't play the games or can't play them, easy for me to digest. It's not hard. And they do it so brilliantly and so wonderfully that I can get into the characters, I can enjoy the characters, and I'm not sitting here like dissecting what they left out from the game or this or that. I can just kick back and enjoy it. Get what I'm saying? Now I do want to bring this up because this is necessary, and I apologize for the spoilers now. So towards the end of the series, well, let me rephrase that. Towards the end of the season, they were going to do the entry concert. This is where it was building up to. And it started to really build up the rivalry between STARISH and QUARTET NIGHT. Well, back in Season 2, at the very end, with the Unit Pre-Awards, there was another group that STARISH feuded with. That was called Heavens. But back then, they were a trio. The trio was as follows. Give me a second. Otori Ichi, Sumeragi Kira, and Mikado Nagi. Well, for those who have seen it, the stipulation was, with the Battle of the Bands, the group that lost had to disband. STARISH won, Heavens lost, but due to a stipulation, an extra stipulation, STARISH could grant if they wanted to have that stipulation nullified about the disbanding. So they did, because they wanted to compete against them again. Well, the Triple S, Heavens decides to show themselves again. But this time they came with backup. And they came with the following. Otori Iji, who may or may not be related to Ichi. Kiryuin Vaughn, Hinata Yamaro, and Amakusa Shion. By the way, Shion and Iji are like my two favorites already. Like I'm already liking him, and I love Nagi. He's an obnoxious little shit, but I love him to death. I don't know what it's about his character, but usually I hate the little prick Shota characters, but I love this guy. I love him. There's something about him I can't hate him. I want to. I'm looking at the fucker like, I want to hate you, but I can't. Fuck you. Anyway, this was such an excellent plot twist, and yes, they performed Heaven's Gate again, but it's the only song that they had, and nobody knew that. Nobody, when they were watching the episode, nobody knew they were showing up again. Everybody assumed, like I did, oh, it's just going to be STARISH versus QUARTET Night. Winner goes to perform the concert. No, we got that plot twist, and everybody's sitting there going, "Holy fuck!" Like, we're all like sitting here on the edge of our seats, going, "Jesus Christ, what's going on here?" Come to find out, by the way, that on Udapri.com, the 7 members of, almost said STARISH, of Heavens have graphics, and the graphics are specifically game graphics, it seems like. I think we're getting another Udapri VM game, visual novel game, and we're going to get roots for each one of them. That should be interesting. So now we have 18 idols, 3 different groups, and the way that the world was mentioned, could we be seeing a world tour season coming up for season 4? Because at the very end they said specifically, to be continued and see you next season. There is a season 4 coming, which also is going to be interesting because of the fact that there's a 5th stage live coming up, and now this also means that Heavens is going to be performing, more than likely, at that concert. Oh, my wall's going to be hurting after this season coming up, I promise you. But now we have to get to the nuts and bolts of what do we actually think of this season. Well, we've already talked about the story. We've talked about the character development, the plot development, and the story progression. And the emotional attachment. Oh my god, I love my boys from the QUARTET Night. I love them dearly. Love them, love them, love them. I love STARISH, although for some reason I was growing to hate them. And not because I don't like them as singers, I didn't like the fact that I felt like they were trying to take something from the QUARTET Night which was theirs. And maybe it's just my bias showing a little bit, but that's the way I felt. But nonetheless, the animation has some issues, some minor issues, but I can look past them, because I've said this in the past. If the animation is shitty to the point where I can't enjoy the show, that's the problem. But if I feel like the situations were only minor, I can look past it. And to me, it's not all of them. Like, I couldn't notice a good portion of them. Okay? There were people that probably literally were looking at them for them and screen capping them, but I couldn't notice a lot of problems, to be honest. And it's tricky, but you can give them a pass on that. The songs were weird, because I really liked the QUARTET Night songs, including their group songs, but I wasn't really feeling the STARISH songs this season, except for Original Resonance. That was a brilliant song. I loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. And then, of course, the new Heaven's Gate song, the new version of Heaven's Gate, I loved it. What's going to suck is, you know, that song's going to be put on like with the final DVD for the season, which is kind of a bummer, because I want them to get their own single, and maybe when the new season comes out, we're going to get that. Oh God, I hope we do, because I was actually a fan of Heavens, believe it or not. I didn't mind them. So this is going to be interesting when we get to season 4. And I have to say this, if you want to watch this season, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. But if you have not seen seasons 1 and seasons 2 yet, please, please, please go watch them first. Please go watch them first. Then go watch Maji Love Revolutions. And then, like the rest of us, sit back and agonizingly wait, because season 4 is coming. And oh lordy, where are we going next? I don't know. You don't know. Who knows? Only the good folks at Broccoli and A1 Pictures. Because goddamn, we are going to have a wild ride coming in about 2 years' time. I will see you then. And I will actually see you also Tuesday with the review for Kuroko's basketball. There were some issues and the episode got delayed until the 30th. So, until then, my friends, you take care and I will talk to you then. Bye-bye.